You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back.
I almost said, and I'm injured.
Oh my gosh.
When I went to the doctor, I was like, it better not be broken. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for an injury.
Do you want to explain to everyone what happened? Including me, because all I got was a vague...
I'm an idiot. I'm a spaz.
Do you know what Jarek asked when I told him what happened?
What?
He said, was she holding Walker? And I was like, I'm pretty sure she would have included that. In the first
I would be hurt way worse because I would have thrown my body down in a different direction.
I'm pretty sure she would have mentioned if, like, her child was also injured.
No, we were doing yard work. Like, I'd already gone, brought Walker to school, went to the gym, came home, did a whole bunch of yard work. So I think I was tired.
Yeah.
And Sheldon had gone to, someone had told me that my brake light was out. So he went to go pick up brake light and, some yard tools that we needed. And so when he got back, I was sitting on the steps taking a little break, and I'm coming down the front porch steps, and I get to the very last one, and I'm talking to him, not paying attention, because I can walk and go downstairs at the same time, right? Yeah. I'm a talented individual.
Yeah, you're a grown-up.
No, I'm not. No. I am not a talented individual, because my foot hit the last step, and I think only like half of my foot was on this step.
Yeah.
But all of my weight was off of the step. And my ankle twisted, and I think I went like the full 90 degrees to the side. And I went all the way down.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I heard a pop or if that was just falling noises. Like, was that just me hitting the ground?
Did you hurt like any other part of your body?
No.
Really?
No.
Because that's how I feel like I would also be injuring, like, the part of my body that then hit the concrete.
No, I mean, my entire left side is sore now from overcompensating, because even though I have crutches, it's really difficult to chase the 1-year-old around with crutches and then have to stop and pick him up and relocate him when necessary, or try and go up or down stairs. And it's been a rough couple of days. Been doing an ice bucket, so basically I put my foot in a pot of water and ice, and it is very painful. Oof. But I'm like, if that helps speed up the healing even a little bit, then I'm gonna do it. That's actually what I'm gonna do when I get home from recording, is I'm gonna have Shelton I'm gonna make him a grilled cheese and tomato soup since his throat's hurt.
Aww. Jeez.
Yeah, he's hurting, like, from, sinus drainage and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna make him a grilled cheese and tomato soup, and then I'm gonna have him make me an ice bucket. Take care of each other.
Well,
but, yeah, it's basically, I did get x-rays, and I wasn't going to go to the doctor at first, even though I was, like, writhing in pain on the couch for the first 30 minutes. Like, I hobbled inside, and I was like, okay, elevate, ice, ibuprofen, immediately. And I was like, okay, well, good so far. Like, the ibuprofen's kicked in, the pain is not, like, excruciating now. Also, I'm filthy, so I'm going to hobble upstairs, like, literally scoot up the steps on my butt.
Yep.
And take a bath so I can do hot ice.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting on the edge of the tub.
Do you have a good tub for baths?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've never seen your bathroom.
Yes, you have. You have.
Okay. I've never seen your bathroom sober. Sorry.
And so I'm sitting on the edge of the tub thinking, like, oh, it's great. My foot's not, like, swelling up instantly, so maybe it's not all that bad. And I take off my sock, and I'm like, there's a bump, like a weird bump protruding from the side of my foot, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever noticed that before. And so I take off my other sock on my non-injured foot, and I'm like, oh gosh, because the bump's not on this foot.
No.
So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're going to the doctor after all.
Gosh.
So I go ahead and I get in the tub, and I text Shelton from the tub. I'm like, so bad news. And so he finished up doing yard work, and we did an x-ray. Everything looked fine in the x-ray. Since it wasn't like a constant, like, level 10 pain or something like that, it was most likely didn't actually tear or rip any tendons. So just a bad sprain, and gonna be in pain for a little while.
Yikes.
Luckily, I heal pretty quickly. So
good. That's good. I think we might have jinxed you because we were talking earlier in the week
about how prepared and ready for Thursday night we were. And then, I blew it all.
Sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm not ever going to say that again. We will never again talk about how on schedule we are.
I know.
So we'll just always prepare to be a little behind schedule. It's fine. Oh, well, I'm glad that you're walking.
Hobbling.
And you're here.
Yeah, but I get the next 2 days, I get off. And I mean, luckily on Thursday when it was really bad and couldn't put any weight on it, Shelton was off. So he was able to, pick up the boy from school and take care of him and everything. But by Thursday night, I was able to put like a teeny amount of weight on it, like as needed. And then by Friday afternoon when I had to go pick up Walker, thankfully one of the daycare ladies saw me like hobbling in with the bandage on my foot. And she's like, do you want me to go get him and bring him out to the car? And I'm like, could you please? And she's like, yes, go outside. I'm like, stop moving.
You're like, Walker, now would be a great time for you to start like walking regularly.
Yeah, he's walking a lot. It's just not his primary mode of transportation yet.
Not doing a Tolly where he just runs free.
He's almost there. I mean, he's gone from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. Like, from no walking whatsoever to walking a lot. And he loves when I just sit in his room and he just does ring around the rosy. He just walks circles around me and like kind of still holds onto my knee or my shoulder.
Yeah.
But then he'll stop and he'll take steps in some direction and he's doing really well.
I love it. Well, got a couple announcements. I guess we should start with the first one that I didn't write down so that I don't forget it. Which is pretty exciting. We will be hopefully tentatively doing a live show soon-ish. The plan is to record the live show and make it a regular episode. We have a local bar here that has kind of given like a tentative yes.
We're still ironing out all details, like dates and everything.
Mostly a date. My main concern, besides my great fear of no one showing up, is not having a good topic. So this is my plea to everyone to please send topics my way, because I feel like this has to be the perfect show. Like, I wish we could have saved Albert Ostman for the live show. 'Cause I'm like, oh man, what a perfect... And you never know which ones are going to be perfect until you do them, but...
I just actually read a book that is set in a brewery called Blue Bigfoot, and they have a Sasquatch sculpture. His name is Larry, and so Larry is also on all the labels, but they call like the drawn label Drunk Larry. And all the beers are Sasquatch themed, and of course the only name that I can remember from the book right now is the one they all hate, because it was they did a contest. You get to name the beer, and it's called Sassy Q instead of Susie Q. And I'm like, I don't hate it as much as they all do.
Aww. Oh, I found when I was doing the hashtags for all of the Sasquatch episodes, Sasquad. That's what we should have been calling the believers, the Sasquatch believers, the Sasquads.
Sasquad.
Members of the Sasquad. Anyways, please send ideas our way. My next announcement is just the episode rating today. I'm changing it from what I wrote down. It's PG. I wrote down G.
So it's not a Dante Tiny Tim.
I would...
With parental supervision.
Parental supervision. It's... Yeah, I mean, I think Dante and Tiny Tim could probably listen to it. Just because I know who their parents are. But we're not going to talk about, like, graphic stuff. It's just kind of a heavy topic.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, they might be kind of sad for a while. I was sad for a while when I...
Yay, just what I need.
I know, I'm sorry. I know I said it was a really good one, and then I got deeper into it, and I just kind of got sad. So, we'll talk about that. Also, third announcement, this episode goes best with pictures, everyone. So, Katy has a nice dossier
And I have toys to play with.
And she has fun props. If you are not...
Quick to the Mars rover. Because I'd rather hang out on Mars.
Yeah, it's...
The moon scares me.
Well...
All of space terrifies me,
Mars
really.
has, like, an atmosphere that might... Well, whatever. What was I going to say?
Mars scares me less than other things. That people should check out our Instagram and Facebook to see these pictures at the Tales We Tell podcast. And those people who don't do the social media, like my dad, you can check out our website at thetaleswetellpodcast.com. All pictures get uploaded there as well.
Yes.
And since we're doing this, I'm going to keep on going.
Yay!
And if you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, like some awesome Sasquatch... Sorry, if you want to be part of the Sasquad, you can check out our Redbubble store. We've got several different logos you can get on just about anything.
They're not all Sasquatch
No.
related. Promise.
And you can also support us without the stuff by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thetaleswetell. There you get early access, commercial-free listening, bonus content, stickers, love notes, and always our undying love and affection.
Yay! All right. Well...
That was a nice setup there.
I know, right? I had...
even with the tangent, I picked right up on it.
My next thing was Katy socials. That was my plan.
After 3 years, we're so in
We're
tune.
on it. Finally. So today's episode is going to be a conspiracy theory.
Ooh.
And I'm actually really proud. I didn't plan this, but I saw in my Facebook memories today, 3 years ago, this week, I think, sometime this week, we did the Lost Cosmonaut episode. And I think you've already kind of guessed the theme.
Yeah. Space.
Yeah. So for our... Well, I say this like we have a YouTube channel. For everyone listening, I have put some props out for Katy. They include lots of tiny plastic spacemen who are supposed to be on the moon, I think. I've got just the top part of the Gemini.
The cone.
Yeah, the pod, if you will. It was a full scale model, I think, of my dad's, and that is all that's left of it. There was another astronaut also, obviously, and he has disappeared. We also have a rocket that I built at space camp. And we also have my space camp certificate that's hanging on the wall. Also, your first two pieces in your dossier, which are the two... Yeah, just go and pull them out so you don't, like, ruin the surprise of what the episode's about. They're just little pictures from space camp. So I went to space camp in 2000.
It's little Hannah in a spacesuit.
I was going to say in 2000 something. It was the year 2000. I was 9. It was the year I turned 10. I went with my dad for 3 days. It was very exciting.
Oh, I love the mission practice guidelines, the abbreviations and pronunciations, like speck, as in a speck of dirt.
Right.
Towel rhymes with pal.
We got to do a whole...
This is so cute.
We got to do a whole, like, space shuttle simulation. It was very fun. I honestly couldn't remember. I was trying to think. I was like, was it a whole week or was it just 3 days? And then this confirmed. It felt like a week to me, to little 9-year-old me.
This is a long thing. Like, this went until 9:30.
Listen, it was the funnest 3 days of my whole life. It was so fun.
And then you graduated.
I know. Also,
it's a certificate, just like your college certificate.
I know, my college award. Also, I was trying to find the picture. I did get to meet Sally Ride while I was there.
Nice.
Who, later in the story, I will be referring to as Sally fucking Ride, just because
she's a fucking badass.
She's a fucking badass.
Is that why it's PG?
Sure. I mean, that part will be bleeped out anyways. Okay. So, we're going to be talking about the Challenger.
Cool.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Challenger?
A little bit.
Okay. What do you know about it?
I actually did listen to, I think, a podcast about this, but it's been a while. Essentially, go boom. Mm-hmm. Teacher. Mm-hmm. Body parts in the ocean.
Yes. So I'm going to kind of break it down. We're going to talk about like what happened, and then I'm going to tell you about a conspiracy theory that I just learned about regarding this disaster.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay.
Ooh. Let's dive in.
Oh, yeah, that was in poor taste, Katy. Come on.
I didn't mean it.
Ooh. All right. So the year is 1986, and this is supposed to be a really big year for NASA. They had 15 space shuttle missions planned, including an astronomy mission to study Halley's Comet and the launch of the Hubble telescope. The first launch of the year was on January 12th, and that was Columbia, which we'll mention very briefly at the end. And then the second scheduled launch was set to happen less than 2 weeks later, and that was the Challenger. Did you know that they reuse space shuttles? Mm-hmm. Just like all the time. Mm-hmm. Seems very irresponsible. I say seems, is very irresponsible, as we will later find out.
Cost effective.
Yeah. So the primary goal of the Challenger's mission was going to be launching the second in a series of tracking and data relay system satellites into orbit. So basically just launching satellites. But then secondary goals, they were going to launch and retrieve the Spartan Halley astronomy satellite to collect data on Halley's Comet, because Halley's Comet was going to be returning to the inner atmosphere, which it only does every 76 years. Mm-hmm. So very cool. And then famously, they were going to have 2 teacher in space lessons, which this was going to be the first time ever that this happened. The lessons were going to be the ultimate field trip, which was comparing life aboard the space shuttle to life on Earth. And the second one was called Where We're Going, Where We've Been, Why, which was discussing the importance of doing research in space.
That reminds me, the perfect field trip or whatever makes me... I put on Magic School Bus for Walker this weekend. It was like a field trip. And I was just like, I hadn't seen Magic School Bus in decades.
Yeah.
So, I'm super excited that I have a kid now and have an excuse to watch it. I watched it way more than Walker did. Oh, he would look up every now and then, especially when the music was playing, and he'd dance for a little bit, and then he'd go back to doing other things, and I'd have to, look away from the TV and remind myself, like, I'm supposed to be watching my child, not the TV, dang it.
They were also planning, as part of this teacher in space lesson, they were going to tape some other sessions about weightlessness that they were going to use for later stuff. Okay, so in January of 1985, so a year prior, NASA had announced a 5-person crew for the Challenger. So that is your first 2 pages. Okay. So we have Commander Francis R. Dick Scobie, pilot Michael J. Smith, and then mission specialists Ellison S. Onizuka, Judith A. Resnick, and Ronald E. McNair. So this is just the first 5 initially. 6 months later, in July of 1985, Vice President George H.W. Bush announced the winner of the Teacher in Space contest, which had over 10,000 applicants. And it was New Hampshire Middle School Social Studies teacher Sharon Christa McAuliffe. And then 3 months later, in October of 1985, payload specialist Gregory B. Jarvis was added to the crew. And I was a little confused about why he was added, but it said he was originally assigned to some later missions, but he was bumped from those missions twice in favor of 2 congressmen that went into space. And I looked up those congressmen, and they were just like, oh, yeah, the first congressman ever to go into space, and then the second congressman ever to go into space. And I was like, why are we sending congressmen into space?
I mean,
we don't need to.
Lance Bass wanted to go to space.
I mean, yeah, but he never did.
Because we wanted to send pop stars.
Because we were like, that's stupid. We don't need to do that. Who cares? Okay. So the Challenger's original launch date was January 23rd, 1986. And this date was pushed back due to delays with the Columbia shuttle, which was actually on the second launch pad. This is the first time in history that they had 2 shuttles. They have 2 launch pads at the Kennedy Space Center. And this was the first time in history that they had 2 space shuttles on the launch pad at the same time. Since then, they have done that many times. I guess it's pretty common. But this was the first time ever. And I guess they had some delays with Columbia, and so they had to delay the Challenger's launch. So they pushed the date to...
I feel like that's probably a common thing. Delays with launches.
Yes, delays are super common.
I mean, how many launches have actually happened on their scheduled date is what I'd like to know.
Well, and if you go back and you look at, like, the original, like, space program, they delayed those launches, like, all the time. Like, as you should. Like, if it's not safe to launch, just
if it's not ready, it's not ready.
Like, delay it.
Did you ever watch From the Earth to the Moon?
Yes.
The Tom Hanks special? That's a great, great thing. My dad, like, back when DVDs kind of were first coming out and were a thing, he was buying a whole bunch, and he bought this one, and he was like, "We're gonna watch this," and I was like, I don't know about
disc series.
So I don't know about this. I was hooked. It was great. And we watched all of it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the like Christmas watches. Like my dad always picks like some absurdly long series to watch over Christmas break or something.
We did Lord of the Rings over Easter one year.
Oh, nice. One year my dad picked Superman, like the old Superman shows. That one wasn't a hit with us. No. So Earth to the Moon, Dad, let's go back to that. Maybe this coming year.
Do a rewatch.
Let's rewatch.
Has Jarek seen it? Maybe that's an excuse.
Yeah. I'm going to make him watch like The Right Stuff tonight. That's like 4 hours, so we'll kill a lot of time.
You could totally handle that at...
I know. And honestly...
8 o'clock on a Sunday.
He hasn't seen it enough. Our family collectively has seen it probably like 200 times. So he needs to catch up. We have a board game that I made for it. He's got to catch up. Okay. So the date was pushed from January 23rd to January 26th, but then that date got pushed because of unfavorable weather conditions. It got pushed to the 27th, and then they had mechanical issues and high winds. So finally it gets pushed to the 28th. They finally clear it for that date despite unusually cold overnight temperatures.
That's got to be the most nerve-wracking thing is, like, I understand it gets pushed for a couple of days for, like, mechanical things or other things. But when it's pushed, like, a day because of weather conditions, you're like, okay, tomorrow's the day. And then you wake up and you're like, it's the day. And then they're like, it's raining out. Yeah. We're not going to do it today. And you're like, okay. So now I just have to sit and twiddle my thumbs for another day.
Yeah.
Ugh, like, what do you do with yourself?
I know. I mean, like, I feel like all the other astronauts were probably like, because they'd all been up before. Kristen McAuliffe, though, was probably like, you know, biting her nails because she's
shaking at her space boots.
Yeah, because she's a teacher who's just she's living my dream of just being a regular person to go into space.
Do you know how long her pre-launch training was?
I think it was a year.
Okay.
Because it was her.
I figured it would be, you know, a pretty intensive crash course, but still.
Yeah. I think it was her, and then they had like a runner-up or like a backup for her. And they pulled them, I think, for a year, and I think NASA like paid their salaries of like, I think it was like what they would have made as a teacher, so like probably not a lot.
But I'm sure, you know, like all other expenses were covered, like, you know, their accommodations and everything. Yeah. And I'm sure their schools were more than happy to hold their position for them because of the publicity. And
they're like, yes, we'll find a sub for you. Sure.
We can hire somebody else for a year. You will have a job when you come back.
Yeah, exactly. So, January 28th, 1986. Liftoff takes place at 11:38 a.m. Eastern Time with 2.5 million children watching. So this was not like a super, like, regular people weren't really watching the launch because it was just a regular launch for everyone else. There was like a million other launches. The main audience watching this was students. It's like literally the worst. This is the worst story. I'm so sorry. 2.5 million students.
When you put in that fact and you're like, oh yeah. It's like, you know, you think the Challenger and like everyone knows kind of what happened. Like even on just like the surface level thing, everyone knows Challenger teacher explosion.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
But then when you like put in that fact that
like,
really kind of like drives home. Like,
it's like the only people watching this were like their families and then 2 million kids who had like specifically stopped school.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
to
schools
watch this
everywhere were like,
and then they were like,
watch this.
And then afterwards they were like, okay, no more learning, I guess, for a while.
I mean, that's like when 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. Like, one of the nuns came in the class and told our teacher, and she immediately turned on the news. Like, this was in science class, and we started watching the news. And, of course, I was then panicked because I was like, oh, God, the terrorists hit tall buildings. My dad works in a tall building. Is his building next?
Yeah. The leaps your mind. Yeah, the connections your minds make when you're...
I was 11.
Yeah, well, and these kids are probably also 11. She's a middle school teacher.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, I remember, the 9/11 is like on the same level of the Challenger.
Yeah.
For
well,
me.
And also,
I don't mean on the same level as what happened.
But I mean,
I'm just talking about like the trauma of being a young kid in middle school and seeing this devastating event.
Yes. Well, and also, not to jump ahead, and I'm sorry for anyone who doesn't know what's about to happen, but immediately after this, people didn't know what had happened and what had caused it. And so initially there were questions of, was this a terrorist attack? Was this some kind of sabotage? Like, was it an attack of some kind? Okay, well, so back to the launch. Mm-hmm. So it's mostly kids watching. I don't think any of the major new, TV stations were even covering the launch. It's like the live crowd who's there watching. So basically all the astronauts' families, mission control, like the people who are in charge, and then a bunch of students are watching this. So once the shuttle clears the tower, control shifts from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. There we go. So for about a minute, everything is normal. And then at 73 seconds, controllers in Houston lost all telemetry from the Challenger. And then radar began tracking multiple objects, which is just like the most chilling line that I read. Cameras that were following the shuttle suddenly showed thick plumes of smoke. Your next picture in there is kind of the iconic image. The rocket boosters shot off in different directions and kind of created this
spiral Medusa. It looks like that spray foam where you spray it from the can and it like immediately starts expanding.
Yep. And it looks, in that picture, it also looks like Yeah. It looks like there's a big explosion. Mm-hmm. Fun fact, there was not an explosion. There was no boom. Horrible fact, a lot of TV coverage added the sound of an explosion in post.
Wow.
Because it looked like there should be one.
Like an explosion.
And it was something that, like, people couldn't wrap their heads around, like, seeing it without the sound.
I think that's something that I do remember from when I listened to a podcast about it, that not about the TVs adding explosion sounds, but the fact that it didn't actually explode.
Yeah.
But I forgot about that because every time the Challenger is mentioned, everyone still says the explosion, the Challenger explosion.
Yeah.
So I forget that that's incorrect.
Yeah.
It's like a Mandela effect thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, because, I mean, in the thing that we remember is that like picture, and it looks like an explosion. So it took several moments for reporters covering the launch live to kind of realize what had happened. Mm-hmm. Don't look it up, anyone. It's just awful to kind of watch people realizing that something awful has happened.
Yep.
But essentially, the Challenger had broken apart. So, recovery efforts couldn't be started until 12:37 due to the falling debris. They had to, like, basically wait for it to all fall. Mm-hmm. It was all in the Atlantic Ocean. It started with 12 aircrafts and 8 ships, and the surface recovery lasted until February 7th, and then submarine recovery efforts began on January 31st. I made that sound like it was whatever. You guys know how dates work.
The submarine had started on the 31st.
Yes.
While the surface ones were continuing through during that time.
Thank you. So it was March 7th before the crew compartment and the remains of the crew were found by Air Force divers. And even then, it took several weeks to recover and identify all of the bodies. The Armed Forces Institute of Pathology performed the autopsies. And then I'm going to read quotes from the official report that they put out. The cause of death of the Challenger astronauts cannot be positively determined. The forces to which the crew were exposed during orbiter breakup were probably not sufficient to cause death or serious injury. And the crew possibly, but not certainly, lost consciousness in the seconds following orbiter breakup due to in-flight loss of crew module pressure.
Basically.
So what we hope is that the orbiter, something happened where it were depressurized and everyone lost consciousness.
And however they died, they were unconscious for it.
Yes. However, there is also evidence to suggest that the cabin didn't depressurize.
Wasn't it something about when they recovered the capsule and they opened it, they were like, oh, it didn't depressurize?
I didn't read anything about that, but
maybe I'm just making that up.
There was evidence that that at least 3 crew members had activated, it was like an emergency air pack or something. Mm-hmm. There was some evidence, which I didn't write down, but it was something about like certain things inside the capsule had been moved or damaged in such a way that wouldn't have happened if it had depressurized. But again, it's like, it was such a mess that it's like,
well, also, I mean, there might have been enough moments between when things started going wrong mm-hmm. to when the cabin did depressurize. Mm-hmm. That was enough time for some of the crew to recognize that something was going wrong mm-hmm. and deploy those emergency air thingies before cabin potentially lost pressure.
Yes, that's obviously what we hope. But essentially, what is the guesstimate is that they were killed on impact when the
capsule hit the ocean.
Yes. So, as a result of the disaster, the Space Shuttle program was halted for 32 months. NASA established the Office of Safety, Reliability, and Quality Assurance, which feels like you should have had that in the first place.
I mean, NASA's been doing this for a little while. Yeah. Now. They've already had some incidents. Yeah. Some pretty big incidents.
You guys don't have an Office of Safety? They began deploying commercial satellites via, quote, expendable launch vehicles rather than manned crews, which is like, you guys have also had expendable launch vehicles this whole time? And then subsequent shuttle crews began wearing pressurized suits during ascent and re-entry. So if anyone after the Challenger had to go up in a pressurized suit for this very reason. The Challenger disaster was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight, the first loss of life since the tragic Apollo 1 fire in 1967 that claimed the lives of astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee.
And it's that crew in from Earth to the Moon. Mm-hmm. They were my favorite of the like recreation actors, and I was like, so I started watching, and I'm like, oh, I love all these, God. And I was like,
yep,
I love Gus. He's my favorite.
Gus Grissom's my favorite astronaut.
Like, he's my favorite. I love him. And I'm just all excited. I'm like, I can't wait to look him up and learn more about him. And And then it happens, and I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah. Well, hey, you can watch The Right Stuff because it ends before that happens.
Okay.
And Fred Ward plays Gus Grissom in that.
Sure.
He's a silver fox. I mean, not in that because he's too young to be a silver fox. Yeah. But he's
like, nah, he was cute.
Don't worry. Anyways,
back to the sad.
Okay, so you ready for this conspiracy theory?
Yes, I can see. I think a Fibonacci spiral.
Oh gosh,
coming through the next page.
Yeah. Okay, so I do want to preface this theory by saying that like I do want to be like really respectful of like the families of the astronauts, and because like the families are all still alive. I mean, this was 40 years ago. 40 years ago in 3 years.
That's what I say. Sheldon's not 40 yet. Don't age him prematurely.
37 years ago.
He's already complaining about his crow's feet.
Oh, God bless him.
I'm like, just means he smiles
get
so
a little
much.
retinol up there.
I told him, like, you need to start using moisturizer. I'll get you some with retinol.
Yeah, does he not have a nighttime...
He doesn't use...
Does he not have a nighttime skincare
he
routine?
does have a nighttime routine. It's come home,
get a skincare routine,
beer,
Shelton.
have a beer, have some dinner, pass out.
Oh, gosh. Well, anyways, I will say I heard about this theory via TikTok. My sister showed it to me on TikTok, and I was like, I'm going to look it up. And then the more I read just in general about, like, the history of everything, and then I got into the theory, I was, like, kind of getting mad at the conspiracy theory. So I will preface it with that. Like, we're going to come back around to it. We are on the side of the astronauts' families. Like, we are team astronauts. I don't know.
Team Challenger.
Yeah, Team Challenger. Like,
Team Challenger crew.
Team Challenger crew. Like, I just want to say, like, let me get through the conspiracy first, and then we'll come out on the other side. Anyways, okay.
We're not the assholes. We're just sharing what the assholes think.
Yeah, okay. So, in 2015, a conspiracy theory surfaced online that stated that most or all of the crew members of the Challenger were not actually killed, but they were alive and living quiet, unassuming lives under their real names. So this is when I say that this episode goes best with pictures. Because I was like, that's a stupid theory. And then this TikTok was like, let me show you pictures. And I was like,
Kind of like the Keanu Reeves' immortal theory. Because there's pictures.
He doesn't age. It's like,
Well, no, there's pictures of, like, someone from the early 1900s. Which, did you know that kids these days are calling us? They were saying, oh, you were born in the late 1900s?
Okay, kids these days need to just fuck off, okay?
Shut your mouth.
Whatever.
Yeah, I was born in the late 1900s. Go kiss a duck.
Oh, I love those memes, though, where it's like, it's just pictures of either the wide bell bottoms or the wide, what were the wide jeans that were just...
Jenko jeans?
Yeah. Those with, like, 8 inches of wet denim because you wore them on a day.
Oh, well, there was also bell bottoms.
Yeah, but it's...
That weren't quite Jenko jeans.
Pictures of those, and it's like, these Gen Zers can have their chokers and butterfly clips, but they didn't go in the trenches or whatever.
No, like... it's like these Gen Zers trying to have bell-bottom jeans and hip huggers. It's like, we didn't suffer so that you could just repeat our mistakes. Yeah, I've seen what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, this is where everyone needs to either get on TikTok or Facebook or our website and look at the pictures. Okay. So, go ahead and look at your first picture. All right. So, our first one is Commander Francis Richard Scobie. So, he was Francis R. Dick Scobie. Middle name was Richard. He was born May 19th, 1939, which means today, if he were alive, he would be 84. Which, granted, this theory was put together in 2015, which is, I think, when these pictures were taken from. All right, so the man that you're looking at on your right is Richard Scobie, CEO of a Chicago-based marketing company called Cows in Trees. Chicago CEO Richard does kind of look like an older version of Dick Scobie to me, I think.
I mean, you could see similarities, but
in the eyes, I think the eyes, the forehead.
Yeah, the nose is wrong. And it's hard to tell because he's smiling differently.
Yeah, he's smiling a little differently.
And also the chin is wrong.
So,
it's similar, but it's wrong.
I love that you're already debunking this. You're like, nope, this is wrong. It's not the same person.
Hashtag Team Challenger crew, okay?
I know.
And their family.
So the marketing company, this was a weird thing to me. The marketing company that Richard is the CEO of, this alleged marketing company, I tried to look it up, and it has a piss poor online presence. And I'm like, you guys are a marketing company. What are you doing? Like, who's doing your marketing for you? And then apparently, quote, opening animation to their logo. So the picture you're looking at is not their final logo. Their actual logo is a cow in a tree, which, again, that doesn't make any sense to me. But apparently there's opening animation. I couldn't find it anywhere except for this one picture. Katie, describe what the picture looks like.
Well, there is a bit of a Fibonacci spiral. But it's, the spiral is made by smoke from a rocket launcher that is strapped to the back of a silhouette of a cow. This looks like something I could have made in print, in paint. Not even Photoshop, but paint.
Yeah.
In, like, I don't know, 40 minutes?
Yeah, it's... So, the way it was presented to me initially in this, like, spooky TikTok video was like that this was their one logo. And so it was like, oh, this 84-year-old Richard Scobie who looks suspiciously like the other one.
He also doesn't look 84.
I think that's a younger picture of him.
Okay.
But they were like, his marketing company that's called Cows and Trees, but this is his logo, and it happens to kind of look a little bit like the picture we all know of the Challenger disaster, which I'm like, it kind of does, but I think the thing that you pointed out is it's a poorly put together picture in general. I think what we should all be focusing on is it's poorly marketed marketing company.
Yeah.
Which is the weirdest thing about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to our next one. Pilot Michael J. Smith, born April 30th, 1945. So he would be about to celebrate his 78th birthday. And then we have Michael J. Smith, University of Wisconsin professor. Again, pretty similar smiles and face shapes.
The smile and teeth are on point.
Also, I don't know if you can see it in this light. They have the exact same color eyes. They both have like
kind of see it. It's
kind of light
hard.
blue. It's like a distinctive color.
The eyes do seem wrong to me, though.
The shape and stuff, yeah.
And the expression,
yeah,
seems wrong.
But that's all I got for him. Is just, it's just
no. He actually does look more.
He does
on
look
par.
pretty similar. And it's just, I mean, it's like here's a guy with the same name who's about. I have no idea how old that Michael Smith is, but like similar looking guy with the same name who's about the same age. All right, now we've got mission specialist Judith Arlene Resnick, who was born April 5th, 1949. She would have just turned 74. Happy birthday, Judy. And then we have Yale law professor Judith Resnick. So again, Yale Judith does kind of look like an older Judith.
It's really hard to tell because they're making different facial expressions.
Yeah.
Also, women age differently than men.
Yep. They do. I think in astronaut Judy's picture, she's wearing makeup. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
And then our Yale professor Judy, I don't think she's wearing a lot of makeup.
Not much, no.
But they do have similar cheekbones.
Chins are similar. I think that astronaut Judith, her jaw is a little wider. And also her eyes are more wide set.
Right. Correct. I put how common is the name Judith Resnick, but it's also a Jewish name, so Judith, I think, is a pretty common Jewish name. Resnick, I think, would probably be a pretty common
Their noses
name.
also look very different. Yale professor, Professor Judith, she has a little bit more of an upturn, and it's a little bit more narrow at the tip of her nose.
Right.
Whereas astronaut Judith, little wider, but also doesn't seem to, go out as far.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next we have Sharon Krista McCoffey, who was born September 2nd, 1948. She would be turning 75 this year. And then we have Syracuse law professor Sharon A. McCoffey. You could argue that these two women look similar.
Similar, maybe. These are not the same people. I'm not even going to list out the differences.
I'm going to tell you what the article on Snopes cites as their similarities. Quote, the cowlick of hair sweeping from the center of their hairlines to the left side of their foreheads. famously hair.
So do I. I do the same thing. I have a cowlick in the same spot. Does that mean I am the astronaut that died 3 years before I was born?
Yes. Could be. You could be. I don't know. They're like, oh, she's got the same name, and she parts her hair in the same way.
I'm just similar colors, but not even that.
Yeah, they're like
similar.
A brunette.
Yeah,
a brunette woman.
She's a brunette with a reddish hue. She's just got auburn hair.
Yeah. I went from like most convincing to least convincing here.
Okay.
All right. So next we have mission specialist Ellison Onizuka, who was born on June 24th, 1946. So he'd be turning 77. And who you're looking at here is Claude Onizuka, who is allegedly Ellison's twin brother that there was no apparent record of before the Challenger. Ooh.
Are you going to debunk that?
Yeah, in a minute.
Cool, thanks. Because also, when you said you went from least convincing, or most convincing to least convincing, I'm like, actually, this one looks pretty good.
This is the most convincing in terms of looks.
Yeah.
If you believe the theory that this is his twin brother that no one knew about until, like, now, it might make sense. But that is not the case. Spoiler alert. So
what is the case?
I'll tell you in a second. That's my look. I have a debunking header.
All right.
Okay, next one. Mission specialist Ronald McNair, born October 21st, 1950. He would be turning 73. Again, Carl McNair is who you're looking at here. Another alleged twin that there was no record of. Ooh,
this one is not convincing at all to me, though.
They have similar smiles, but
I think the smile is very different.
Oh, I thought they had similar smiles. Carl has a gap in his teeth, which you can't make.
You don't grow a gap.
You can't make that. And then Gregory Jarvis doesn't have one, so sorry. Don't look at that. That's different.
Well, I was ready for Gregory Jarvis.
Sorry, they couldn't find.
I was already moving the sheet when you told me there wasn't
one. As I said, you can probably see the many holes in this theory already. And I couldn't bring myself to, like, present it in a factual way. Like,
there's a hole right there.
Yeah. Katy pointed to the gap in Carl McNair's teeth.
Not making fun of you, Mr. McNair.
No, gaps in teeth are cute. Not
making fun of you. I was just using it as a pun.
But, like, imagine, I should send you the original TikTok video. Imagine if someone is, telling you things that are lies, like, these two people just happen to have the same last name. Some articles were like, oh, this is Claude Onizuka, someone who happens to have the same last name as Ellison and looks exactly like him. And you're like, but that's a lie. Like, that's not... And then they're like, one of the lies that I read, might have been in the TikTok video, was like, every astronaut on the Challenger had a twin. I was like, no, they didn't. That's not true. You're just making stuff up. Oh, gosh. But if you are presented this in a very serious manner and you're fed a couple lies, it could maybe be convincing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I'm going to read you my debunking thing.
All right.
Okay, so the easiest thing, apart from you already doing what you did, which was pointing out that these are not the same people by looks.
And I'm not good at, like, seeing similarities or differences. Like, I'm not good at looking at someone being like, oh, yeah, that's your brother. Or like, oh, I can see you look like your dad. I am not good at that.
Except being able to tell that your child looks exactly like you.
Oh, I've got some pictures I have to show you, by the way.
Ooh, okay. I keep looking for...
There's a couple of pictures of me when I'm basically his age that I'm like, oh my god, Walker is my kid.
I keep looking for Shelton in him, and
it's there.
I'm waiting on it.
It's funny how much he's changed from a year ago to now. Like, when he was just a squishy potato, I was like,
he still looked like
he looks like an alien. But yeah, everyone's like, he has your eyes. And I'm like, all right, sure. He still definitely has my eyes. But then for like a good several months stretch, it was like, oh no, he looks like Sheldon. Now he looks like me again.
Yeah. I never saw Sheldon, but well, whatever.
He's there, I promise. I can guarantee it.
We'll see. I don't know. All I'm saying is I can't guarantee that Sheldon's the dad of that baby.
I mean, I can at least guarantee that Sheldon was there.
Well, yeah. I'm sure he was there for some of it.
I was making a joke about... Never mind.
I was insinuating that you were a whore.
And I was insinuating that he was a voyeur.
Oh, yeah, okay. So we were both kind of making the same joke.
He's not.
And you're not. So
I'm not.
Which there's nothing wrong if you were. Just to be clear, we don't kink shame on this podcast. But just to be clear about Katie's specific ones, it's not that.
Yeah, I'm not a whore. My child is my husband's son. My dad listens to this. He's actually texting me right now about the episodes that he just texted me a little while ago about the caving one. And then he's been texting me about escalator and elevator horror stories.
Hey, I want to just say I'm really proud of us because, and that's why we drink, is copying our episodes now.
Oh.
Not really, but last week they came out with, I think Christine did our cave guy. Why can't I think of his name?
I can't think of his name right now. Okay. I'll think of it in a minute, I'm sure.
Insert name of cave guy. And then this week, today, they came out with, she covered the 2 resurrection men, the guys who stole the bodies and stuff. I hate it because I don't really like to listen to episodes that other podcasts cover of ones that we have done like fairly recently.
Because you worry that we've missed something.
Yeah, and also I'm like, I know all. I know it all. Floyd Collins, that's his name.
That's it. I should remember Floyd because...
Come on.
Virginia, I know. Anyhow.
Anyways, okay, the debunking here.
All right, yeah.
All right, so easiest way to debunk this is if you look up the people that this theory is alleging.
The professors and the marketing CEOs.
They're real people, and they have pretty...
actual birthdays.
Actual lives and histories and backgrounds. For example, Judith Resnick, I think she was our Yale, our Yale professor, graduated from NYU in 1975, which actually makes her about 10 years younger than our astronaut Judith. And while astronaut Judy was studying and working at places like Xerox and NASA in the 70s and 80s, Yale Judith was teaching law school. Which I will say... later on, I'm going to get into why Judy Resnick...
I'm sure there's several lawyers out there that can verify that, yeah. No, I remember in January of 1986, I was in class with Professor Resnick.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say, because I've already... spoiler alert, Judy Resnick is my new favorite astronaut.
Besides Sally fucking Ride?
Yeah. Sorry... everyone else who's in here.
All the others on the wall.
All the other ones who are on the wall. She's fucking amazing. And she was so fucking talented. I have no doubt that she could have also been in law school while training to be an astronaut because she was that fucking brilliant. But she wasn't. She wasn't. She wasn't.
She was only interested in... the only laws she cared about were the laws of gravity.
There you go. Laws of physics?
Laws of physics, yeah.
Another example, Sharon McAuliffe was...
Laws of relativity. Sorry.
Sharon McAuliffe went to Syracuse University.
Which one? Teacher or the other? Was she a professor?
Okay. Yeah. The other one I'm going to call Krista, because that's what teacher. So Sharon went to Syracuse University. This is going to make me sound so sketchy. She has an active Facebook page, because I looked her up. Not sketchy, like...
No, you're just doing research.
But, like, on her Facebook page, she's got, like, pictures of her husband and grandchildren. Like, she has her own life. Krista McAuliffe went to Framingham State College. She was married with 2 kids when she died. And, like, in what world does Krista fake her death and then abandon that family and go off and have this other family and not...
Does the conspiracy theory go into why they faked their deaths to, like...
Kind of. Okay. I'm going to get into that in a minute. I have my own ideas of why they are suggesting that, and then I have another section of like why NASA might want to cover up some stuff. You're jumping ahead. Take a drink. Sorry.
Taking a lot of drinks.
I know.
This is stressing me out.
In the case of Ellison Onizuka and Ronald McNair, with their alleged twins, those are just their brothers. They're regular brothers. So, Ellison's brother Claude is his younger brother.
I didn't go into the similarities because I was like, I don't know about twins, but like I could potentially believe that maybe. Like,
they're related.
Head shape was a little wrong. He looked, Claude looked younger than he should have. Like, everyone else, like, Ellison, the astronaut, looked about the same age as all of the other astronauts. But Claude looked younger than all of the doppelganger photos. And, which could have just been a younger photo that you found. And I'm like, the eyes are the same, the nose is kind of the same, but that's about it.
Yeah. But they looked related.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, that one is, like I said, it was
that was the most convincing.
Believable.
But it's like,
because it's his actual brother.
He actually became a spokesperson for the family following his brother's death. So he was like very vocal. So it's like
he was in the public eye, existing.
People weren't like, what? Ellison has a brother? No, like he was very much there. And then Carl McNair is Ronald's older brother. He also has, like, a very well-documented life. Like, he's a regular person. Okay, so reasons why people might want to lean towards this conspiracy. Okay, so the fact that cause of death couldn't be determined was kind of sketchy. The whole idea of, like, not wondering if the astronauts had survived, but wondering if... I think the fact that everything was inconclusive. Like, they couldn't determine their cause of death. They couldn't determine if they had been alive.
The reason they couldn't determine all of that is because there's so many factors that go into determining these things that were unknown because they didn't have communication with the crew the entire time. Well, and also if there wasn't like if they weren't able to like read everything and know everything that was going on in the cabin at the time, like there's a lot of holes in like you can't finish a puzzle without all the pieces.
And their bodies were underwater for like 2 months before they were recovered. So it's like that's a lot. That's a long time. The Washington Post ran a fairly irresponsible article. I believe it was
journalists irresponsible. Never.
I was like Googling. I was like, is the Washington Post a reliable source? And the internet was like, yes. And I was like, are you sure? And then I was like, was the Washington Post reliable in 1988? And the internet was like, I don't know what you're asking.
Jeeves didn't help you out?
No. So I think this article is in 1988. From my understanding, this Washington Post is like, hey, everyone, this is something that the Miami Herald said. And then it just like rephrased a Miami Herald article. Okay. So I'm just going to...
That's not irresponsible. It's just lazy journalism to, like, re-report someone else's reporting without doing their own, like, fact-checking and investigation. That's just he said, she said.
Well, to be fair, I didn't look up the Miami Herald, but it didn't sound... Okay. I'm just going to read you some quotes from this.
Okay.
Okay. If it had landed softly, they could have swam home. Okay. Next one. To prevent the Brevard County Medical Examiner from performing autopsies as required by law, the bodies of 3 astronauts were moved to a military base where local officials had no jurisdiction. So there was questions about like the legality of having military personnel perform the autopsies. But this reporting is saying that they did that specifically so that the Brevard County Medical Examiner could not have access to them. that, to me, implies that they're specifically covering up something about the bodies, right?
I mean, yeah, the way that it's presented does imply that for sure. But, like, my understanding is, like, if you're in the military, you essentially belong to the military, like, even after death for a little while. So, like, if an autopsy needs to be performed and the military claims jurisdiction over the bodies because they were in the military, then, like, sure. The military could step in and do that, like, have that jurisdiction. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like, this situation may or may not.
Yeah. But again, I think it's irresponsible to present it in this way of saying to prevent
absolutely the way that it's presented is 100% implying that the military is stepping in to cover something up.
Yes. Okay, next one. When the Brevard County medical examiners refused to sign death certificates for bodies they had never seen, NASA officials at Johnson Space Center in Houston typed up their own. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that, I don't know, it just, again, I didn't fact check their article. They probably didn't fact check their article. And then this is the last one. A top NASA official suggested to several people that it would be, quote, convenient if some of the data showing that the astronauts survived the blast just disappeared. I'm like, what? I don't know. It's just... So they're printing this article that's like, NASA's being really sketchy. NASA's trying to cover up the fact that the astronauts, like, initially survived. NASA's trying to cover up, like, stuff going on with the bodies. So I'm like, okay, I can see why people, like, are thinking that there's, like, some conspiracies. There's still some misconceptions about the disaster. Like, we talked about, people talk about it.
People still think it's an explosion.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't.
This is one of the misconceptions that I found while I was doing research. A Distractify article that I read said, quote, in March 1986, the New York Times ran an article about the families of Ellison Onizuka and Michael J. Smith identifying the bodies of their loved ones, which could not have been easy. So I looked up that article, the New York Times article. That article actually stated that the families had been told that the bodies of their loved ones were identified, which is not the same as them identifying their bodies.
Yeah, no.
They were told by the pathologist that the bodies, they were saying, like, your loved one has been identified.
And, again, to reiterate, like, it was 2 months.
Yeah.
After they died.
Yeah.
That the bodies were even recovered.
Yeah.
And
families can't identify it at that point. I mean, nor should they.
Only professionals can. Yeah, no, like, families should not be asked to
Yeah.
identify remains that...
Yeah, that's DNA That's what we have DNA for.
Yeah. Dental records.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything but loved ones having to see their deceased in any kind of condition other than it just looks like they're sleeping.
Yeah, like, exactly.
If there's anything remotely upsetting about the appearance of a dead person, you should not be having their families. Not when things like fingerprints, dental records, etc. exist.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I agree.
Oh, did they have any, identifying features? Do they have any tattoos? Or if there's no skin or whatever, like, did they break any bones? Like, yes, they broke their arm when they were 12, and you can x-ray the remains and be like, oh, look, a fracture in the exact right spot.
Yeah.
Like, there's multiple ways. Sorry. I'm getting upset for the families right now.
That's okay. You about ready to be more upset?
I'm already upset beforehand that I'm upset for both the families of the crew and these poor doppelgangers that have been identified, because there are probably crazy people out there now reaching out to them, infiltrating their lives, looking up their Facebook pages. Listen. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But no,
I didn't friend her.
I'm sure that these people have been now, like, bothered and harassed in their daily life because they happen to somewhat resemble some famous people. Like,
well, at the very least, they've had their pictures put on some random TikTok.
And now some podcast.
And some poor lady's like, I just wear my hair parted like that. That's just the way it is.
It's okay, me too. It's okay.
Oh my gosh.
I also part my hair to the same side and have a cowlick in the front. And I got a cowlick in the back too. I'm just licked all over by cows. Not by the ones in trees,
Not the ones in trees. Well, the other reason people might be looking for a conspiracy is because NASA did have something to hide. Do you want to know what it was?
What?
O-rings.
Ah, yes.
You heard about these things?
Yes. Yep.
Great, because I have a whole nother section
little
to
rubber
tell you about.
gaskets.
Yep. All right. So I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already started listening to one of my favorite podcasts called You're Wrong About, you should listen to it because it's the best. They did a episode on the Challenger disaster, which I re-listened to, which is where a lot of this research comes from. So I'm going to try to compress and get this down, but also just make everyone really mad at NASA. Okay, so, yeah, you can look really quick. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, so the makeup of a space shuttle. I really wish I had a space shuttle, not toy, model.
For your next birthday.
Thank you. Okay, so you got the orbiter, which is like the shuttle thing. Mm-hmm. You have the external tank, which is the orange thing, and then you have the
big orange tube.
Big orange tube. And then you have the two solid rocket boosters on the sides. Okay. The rocket boosters are made up of 4 different segments, which are fitted together. The way that it was explained to me via a podcast was, think like you took a plastic bottle, cut it up, and then you're putting it back together. So you're kind of fitting one piece into, you're like shoving it kind of into the other piece. So what you're also, to create a seal, you put a rubber band in there, and then you shove it in there, and then you put silly putty around it to like even make it more sealed. Okay, the rubber band in that case is our O-ring. But in this case, it's 38 feet in circumference, and it's 1/4 inch thick. Which is like...
still pretty thin.
Very thin. And the silly putty is still silly putty, but it's like science silly putty. Scientific silly putty.
Yeah. Silly putty is, despite its silliness, pretty scientific.
It is very scientific. Okay, so the night before the launch of the Challenger was 8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is super rare in Florida. And Katy, you're a scientist. Tell me what happens to rubber when it is exposed to very cold temperatures.
It becomes very, very brittle.
Very good.
Still got it, baby.
Right. So rubber loses a lot of structural integrity. And one very important component of the O-rings is its ability to flex with the vibrations of the rocket.
Not necessarily expand and contract, but stretch.
Yeah. So by the time of the launch, the temperature was only 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So remember I said that like they were cleared to launch despite like
being colder.
It being really cold. Like despite the fact that it was 36 degrees, like that didn't mean the O-rings were 36 degrees. They were still pretty cold. So what was later...
yeah, because it was only 11 something in the morning, so...
yeah.
And also this was in January, so basically it hadn't had time for everything to warm back up.
Yeah, and even if it had warmed back up, that doesn't mean that, like...
it wasn't warming up much.
Yeah, and that doesn't... I mean, your rubber bands aren't going to go back to being perfect after they've been brittle.
Everyone go put a rubber band in the freezer for a couple of hours and then stretch it and see how elastic it is.
So it was later confirmed by looking at multiple different camera angles of the launch that the O-ring on one of the rocket boosters failed at the launch. So you can actually see a small puff of gray smoke like when it happened. But when it failed, so like when the seal broke, it created a 0.04 inch gap. But the heat of the rockets melted the putty, the silly putty, enough that it created a temporary seal until it didn't at 73 seconds. So when that happened, when the gap opened up, what happened was that rocket fuel rapidly escaped from the rocket booster, which essentially caused it to lose pressure. So basically what you're seeing happening is a rocket booster just loses pressure, loses its thrust, and like twists off of the rest of the whole thing.
Because those things are also designed to eventually detach from
but not
everything.
While the other one's still going up.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it kind of throws the whole thing off balance. The other one detaches. So like that weird pattern you're seeing is just the rocket boosters just kind of doing their thing. Mm-hmm. But the force of them twisting off like is tearing holes in everything. So that's what causes...
Yeah, because it's designed to attach or disengage eventually, not essentially rip itself off.
Yes. So that one thing is what caused the whole disaster. So immediately...
A quarter-inch thick piece of rubber is responsible for the lives of several people.
And a 0.04 inch gap. Yeah. It's crazy. So immediately after the disaster, President Reagan put together the Rogers Commission to investigate what had happened. Although apparently he instructed them, quote, "Whatever you do, don't embarrass NASA." Which, like, f*** off, Reagan.
Yeah, no, I mean, anytime there's anything even mildly government-related, there's gonna be conspiracy theories that pop up. So, like, nobody's surprised that there's a conspiracy theory about this.
Also, I'm like, don't put together a commission to investigate a disaster, but then be like, but don't embarrass the people that caused the disaster.
Well, that's the thing, too, about, like, any kind of scientific study. Mm-hmm. If you read, like, oh, a new study was published that says that, you know, Coke is actually a superfood and it's great for you. You have
Coke the drug or Coke the drink?
Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's a superfood. It's
you can
the
eat
nectar
both of them.
of the gods. You have to, anytime there's some new study that comes out, you have to go and look and see who funded the study. Mm-hmm. Because if, you know, the sugar conglomerate funded this particular study, then obviously the results are going to be skewed in favor of sugar and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to be very careful when you're looking at any kind of scientific study or investigation like this. Like, who's funding this investigation?
Yeah.
Oh, the government is investigating
the government? That's weird.
It's the fox guarding the hen house.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So, like, sure, conspiracy theories are destined to pop up.
Yeah. So the committee included a bunch of scientists and engineers, but it also included some big names in aeronautical history like Neil Armstrong and Chuck Yeager, and also Sally Ride on there. And then it also included Nobel Prize-winning physicist and overall badass Dr. Richard Feynman. He's going to be our hero of the story. So Dr. Feynman immediately ignored Reagan's directions. And
he's like, I'm going to find the fucking truth no matter what. I don't care who I catch with their pants down.
Yeah.
We're getting to the bottom of this.
He immediately started f***ing around. He's
around find out?
Yeah. Around Feynman is what they called him.
There's a lot of crows in this. Sorry, Jarek.
So he started talking to NASA employees, like, unofficially. Like, I feel like he just, like, went and had a beer with them and was like...
slide.
Yeah. And what he found was a troubling attitude and a flawed design just in the whole makeup of the management structure there. For example, when he asked the managers at NASA what they estimated the chance of a catastrophic accident was, their answer was 1 in 100,000. Sorry, 1 in 100,000.
That's not that big.
So, in his words, quote, you could launch a shuttle each day for 300 years and expecting to lose only one. But when he asked the engineers the same question, they said 1 in 200.
Hold on, and that's why you always trust engineers.
Yeah.
There you go, Dad. I said it for you.
Yeah, so, like, the engineers are like, oh no, catastrophic disaster very likely. And the managers are like, nah, it's fine.
I'm even 1 in 100. That's still, like...
Yeah, I mean...
I would need 1 in, 100 million.
Yeah.
For it to be, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So this is a quote from Ron Feynman. Quote, NASA had developed a peculiar kind of attitude. If one of the seals leaks a little and the flight is successful, the problem isn't so serious. Try playing Russian roulette that way. You pull the trigger and the gun doesn't go off, so it must be safe to pull the trigger again. So essentially he was saying that they were aware that they would have a flight, see that there were problems happening with the hardware, but they were saying, well, the flight was successful, so the problems with the hardware must not be that important. So let's just keep going.
That's not how it works, though.
No, that's not how it works. So, they knew...
I'm so frustrated.
I know. So they knew that the O-rings failing had caused the problem, but they didn't know why. And then, Sally Ride leaked a document that NASA was deliberately withholding to another committee member, Major General Donald Kutya. He casually leaked it to Feynman. Mm-hmm. And the document showed a correlation between the air temperature and the O-ring failures, essentially meaning that NASA had the data to show that O-rings were more likely to fail in colder temperatures. There's actually apparently, like, a TV moment where they're, like, someone's, like, testifying or whatever, and Feynman, like, gets an O-ring.
There's a gotcha moment?
Yeah, he, like, gets there's, like, a scale model of, like, a space shuttle, and he had gone to the hardware store before and gotten, like, a pair of pliers, and he takes the scale model and, like, rips an O-ring off of it, and then he takes it, puts it, does like a figure 8 and like dunks it in his glass of ice water that they have there. Mm-hmm. And then literally waits, like during the commercial break or whatever, waits for the cameras to start rolling again, waits for them to say like, oh, does anyone else have anything else that they want to say? And then he's like and then he brings it back out and he's like, and it doesn't like snap back, and he's like, oh, this might have something to do with like our problem or something. Like, just like does this wonderful little science demonstration. He's just amazing.
Baller.
Furthermore, there had been a teleconference the night before the launch between the engineers at Morton Theacle, which is the company that had been hired to build the booster rockets, and NASA. So the Morton Theacle engineers told NASA, basically, it's too cold to launch. They said, we've never launched in this cold weather. The data shows that the colder the weather, the more damage to the O-rings. We don't think it's safe to launch. But when they were pressed for evidence, the engineers were like, we don't have evidence. We just haven't ever launched in this cold of weather, and we don't think it's safe. And in the end, NASA was like, well, we want to launch anyways, so you need to sign off on this paperwork saying that the O-rings are safe. And the engineers were like, no, we're not going to do that. And so their managers were like, we'll just sign off anyways. Yeah. Like.
Managers suck.
Okay. All right, so just some more... I've got some happy facts with you.
It's a rubber band.
Know. Look, I have happy facts at the end.
Okay, good.
Okay, just some other damning evidence against NASA. Going way back to the original construction of the space shuttle, a different commission was put together by the House of Representatives, and this found the original request for proposals that NASA put out when they were looking for companies to make the booster rockets. So this is like, we're building a space shuttle. We need someone to make booster rockets. Who can do it for us? So in the proposal, they specified that this company should, quote, minimize production and operating costs. Which is like, you're putting people in a rocket into space. Don't minimize production and operating costs. Maximize them. Maximize those things. And then they got 4 companies that, like, I don't know, like, put bids in. Mm-hmm. And they, like, ranked them all for, like, as, like, most qualified or whatever. Morton Theacle was the least qualified. But they were the cheapest, so they went with them.
That's how it goes.
Yep. Going back as early as 1979, so 7 years before this disaster, there's evidence that's literally in the Rogers Commission. Like, you can Google the Rogers Commission, and NASA has it, like a PDF. You can just pull it up. There's so much evidence of problems with the O-rings that, like, people were telling NASA. And by evidence, I mean, like, memos and letters. Okay, I'm just going to give you an example. A memo dated January 19th of 1979. This is from an engineer named Leon Ray at the Solid Rocket Motor something. And he's writing to his superior, quote, "We find the theacal position regarding design adequacy of the clevis joint," meaning the way that the rocket boosters are put together, "to be completely unacceptable for the following reasons." And then he literally says, like, because the O-rings are, like,
fragile and
susceptible to failing. Yeah.
Well, and just, like, temperature fluctuations.
Yeah, he basically says this design is shitty. And that's in 1979. And then a memo dated July 31st of 1985. So 6 months, 7 months, 5 months. I can't do math. 5 months before the disaster. Mm-hmm. This is from an engineer at Morton Theacle to the VP of engineering. Quote, "This letter is written to ensure that management is fully aware of the seriousness of the current O-ring erosion problem in the SRM joints from the engineering standpoint." And then he writes the whole thing. And then at the very end, he says, "It is my honest and very real fear that if we do not take immediate action to dedicate a team to solve the problem with the field joint having the number one priority, then we stand in jeopardy of losing a flight along with all launch pad facilities."
Dude, can you imagine being that person that wrote that?
Like, I mean...
Like, the anger and, like, guilt.
Can you imagine being the person on the other end of that memo who fucking ignored it?
Oh, because they probably had the ego and arrogance or whatever that they probably are fine. Meanwhile, the engineer that wrote that may have been fired. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure he was. I'm pretty sure all of them were.
But, I mean, just both the equal parts, like, vindication of, like, I was right, but also the, oh God, I was right.
Yes.
And, like, did I do enough? Like, maybe it wasn't enough.
Like, I could have done more.
I should have done more. Maybe we could have saved these people.
Yeah,
the guilt, the burden of knowing that was the problem.
Yeah. And also because you think about in those positions where, like, you're going to your superior and then it's like, okay, well, how far do I go? How far is too far? When do I need to be quiet?
Yeah.
And then it happens, and then I'm sure he does. You do think, I shouldn't have worried about my job. I should have just kept going because now 7 people are dead.
Yeah.
I should have done whatever it took. And
yeah, because he might not have been fired for writing that letter. He might have gotten a slap on the wrist or something and decided to just leave it. And
Yeah. So by 1986, NASA was under a ton of pressure to make spaceflight routine. They were aiming to reach 60 launches a year.
Jeez.
Katie, how many weeks are in a year?
52.
How many launches can you do per week if you're doing 60 launches a year?
It's like 1.0000000 like 765 or something like that.
More than one launch a week of a space shuttle. Guys. So they were also tired of the delays that the Challenger was also experiencing. We talked about the delays. People were really tired of delays. They also had 2 other launches coming up after the Challenger that needed...
Sorry, it was 1.1538.
Oh, thank goodness.
Not 000. I was thinking it was closer than it was.
There were 2 other launches after the Challenger that needed to be timed with the orbit of Jupiter. And so they were like, well, if we delay it anymore, it's going to, like, throw off the schedule. So, like, we have to launch. Or it was just... Yeah. So basically... NASA chose the cheapest, poorest quality construction for its booster rockets, ignored years of warnings about the faulty design and function of the O-rings, and pushed forward with the launch due to unrealistic schedule demands.
So, I mean, it's no secret that NASA fucked up.
NASA fucked up, yes.
And they absolutely sure did have things that they would probably want to hide or bury or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that does not still equate a conspiracy of these people. Like, it... If anything, it just is further evidence that these people died because of NASA's, you know, carelessness and cost-cutting measures.
Yeah. Well, and also all of that, most of that evidence is publicly available today. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, just Google it.
Not to, you know, cut them any slack or anything, but like they're a government entity and they are government funded, so they only have so much money they can spend. So like obviously, yes, they do have to go for not necessarily the cheapest contractors, but you know, contractors that can fit within their budget. So they don't have unlimited coffers. So again, not to cut them any slack. But because they were warned. Or at least the contractors company was warned, and they should have reported that to NASA. But anyway.
The You're Wrong About episode really goes into depth talking about why it is essentially a white-collar crime, because they were like, everything was working as it was supposed to work. It's like everyone was doing their jobs the way they were supposed to do them, and the system was corrupt. It was like it was set up to fail.
But that also, it doesn't... NASA messed up, but that doesn't mean... I don't understand the conspiracy. I don't.
Yeah, and also a big flaw of that conspiracy is that why would they be living under their same names?
Like, why would NASA want to pretend to kill people?
Yeah.
Because it led to their... quote, death, led to this investigation that then showed NASA in a very unflattering light. Like, why?
I think maybe one of the theories... listen, my source
some other entity, was it Space Force competing with NASA? And they're like, okay, we're not off the ground yet.
Maybe.
But what we need to do is we're going to kidnap some astronauts, fake their death just to make NASA look bad. It'll cut NASA's funding. So in, another almost 30 to 35 years, we can rise from our unknown station of Space Force and take over.
Oh, gosh.
Thanks to some idiot in charge at the time.
I feel like maybe one of the theories was that I might be making this up on the spot, that like maybe... I don't want to say this about Morton Theacle because who knows, but like something about like the astronauts never got on there, or like the engineers told them about it and they were like, I don't know. The theory doesn't make any sense.
No, because there's a whole bunch of people in mission control.
I know.
Who would be talking to them. There's a whole bunch of people actually at the Space Center watching. It's an outdoor event. It's not like they can go behind a curtain and hide.
I don't know if you guys know this, but you had to be real far away from those rockets and stuff when they go off. You can't just like go in and then go out a trapdoor and like hide underneath it. You got to be like miles away from that shit.
It takes a while to get far away from it.
You can't. You got to be real far away. I will just say Michael Hobbs, who is he was one of the hosts of You're Wrong About. He doesn't do it anymore. He pointed out, rightfully, that NASA pretty much learned nothing from the Challenger disaster. They chose to blame, quote, middle management for not relaying the O-ring information to the right people. That was their, out.
Well, middle management is stupid. There's this quote from a book that Shelton was reading that, really sticks with me. I'm going to totally butcher it, but basically the entire, job role of middle management is to make their job relevant.
Yeah.
It's like a weird, a self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever. It's like their only role is to come up with tasks that
make their job
relevant. It's like, oh, well, all the employees have to do this thing that is then reported to middle management.
Yeah.
And so they have to make up, basically, they make up bullshit.
It's like middle management's job is to, like, organize these reports. Yeah. And the reports are bullshit reports that they make up. That
Middle management is a bullshit job.
Yeah.
But I guess the only other purpose is for them to be used as scapegoats for people.
Yeah.
Like NASA.
So, because they learned nothing 17 years after the Challenger Columbia happened, which was in 2003, and that is the space shuttle that I actually don't know the details of that one, but it had a malfunction coming back.
I was about to say they had a problem on re-entry.
Yeah, and we were I remember that one because I remember the shuttle right after it because I was abroad. I was in Ukraine for that one, and we like all our little team gathered around the TV to watch the landing because we were like, oh, the last one up. We gotta.
I remember getting Columbia and Challenger confused a lot because I mean, we were alive. But,
well,
14, you were 13.
Yeah, one didn't make it going up, one didn't make it coming back. That's why we don't have space shuttles anymore. Essentially, is because NASA didn't learn anything. They lost another space shuttle.
They lost a lot of public opinion.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, you have the Apollo program, you lose 3 men immediately, like Apollo 1. They did so much, they stopped, they did so much stuff. And then you're good. You didn't lose anyone for so long.
And I think it was because it was shiny and new at that time.
Yeah.
That people actually cared about it. Whereas by... late 80s and early 2000s, people didn't care too much about space anymore. Yeah. Like, it wasn't exciting and shiny and new, so, like, the public didn't care too much, and also the government didn't care that much. Yeah. Like, again, kind of going back to, like, funding,
Yeah.
And I coming from a nonprofit, like, I sympathize, like...
Yeah.
If the money's not there, you can't do things.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there's only so much you can do with your budget, and that's space expensive.
Yeah, space is expensive. I agree. And I hate it, because, like, I grew up wanting to be an astronaut, and, like, hello, I went to space camp. I loved NASA, and, like, I still want to. I hate that they f***ed this up so badly, but
I'm not absolving them of their foolish mistakes. I'm just saying that, like, it's hard. They were probably a lot of times, like, these middle managers and also probably upper folks were probably caught between a rock and a hard place of, like, they're, the higher ups are telling us we have to do this launch, and we're telling the higher ups that we need more money because things aren't up to snuff. Yeah. And they're saying, we don't care, figure it out, do the launch. And so, like, I imagine that there's a whole lot more going on behind the scenes that really just kind of puts them in this difficult position that sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't, clearly. Yeah. And, like, you have the one bad thing, but when it's shiny and new and everyone cares, you can still drum up, like, there's that public interest. You can still drum up the money and whatnot. Like, we're gonna do better. Yeah. And then you have this other one, but the public interest isn't really there. In fact, you get a lot more public censure because 2.5 million children were watching live and this disaster happened. So real bad. And so it's a little harder to, like, really rally behind. Yeah. And things only get worse because space exploration's not shiny and new anymore, especially by the 2000s. Like, oh, it's 2000. We don't have hover cars and we're not living on Mars. What's going on?
Okay, I just want to point out that in 1997 or 1998, John Glenn was the oldest man to go into space, and that was pretty cool. And also, I watched that when I was in 2nd grade.
Space is terrifying, but space is also cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, we still make space movies that aren't,
No, all the
Wars
space
and
movies,
tricks.
all the space movies we make today are terrifying.
Well, yeah.
Gravity ruined my life. Every anxiety I've ever had about space.
And then there's one with Chris Pratt and
and
Jennifer Lawrence too. I didn't see that one.
There's one with Pedro Pascal that we just watched. It's kind of stupid, but it's got Pedro Pascal in it. If anyone is also riding that train, which I am.
Everyone is.
Everyone wants to give me a copy of Esquire. I would love that. Okay, are you ready for some happy facts to end on? Okay.
Yes.
If you want to refer to your first couple of pictures just so you have faces to put, I'm just going to tell you some good facts about the astronauts because I wanted to save all the good stuff about them. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have anything about Dick Scobie. I did look him up several times, and
he looks like a golden retriever.
We can say that. He just had a very basic history.
Basic is boring.
I mean, he's very handsome.
He reminds me a little bit of Mr. Brady.
Who? Like,
Mr.
from
Brady.
like the Brady Bunch?
Bunch.
Okay, we'll go with that. Without the perm?
Yeah, before the perm.
Before the perm.
Seasons 1 through 3.
Okay.
No,
I mean, very handsome guy.
Just, like, clean cut, very wholesome. He just has this nice, warm, inviting smile.
Yeah.
Like,
that was basically his whole Wikipedia page was just very, like, just clean cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he
just seems like a swell guy.
He probably was, I'm sure. Okay, Michael Smith, the pilot. His fun fact is that he was born in Beaufort, North Carolina.
Huh.
I know. And he graduated.
What's up, bro?
He graduated from East Carteret High School.
Huh. That's not far from where we live.
Yeah, and it is pronounced Beaufort, in case anyone is wondering.
And
in
South Carolina, it is Beaufort.
But up here, it's Beaufort.
When I lived in South Carolina for a while, I was, somebody said something about Beaufort, and I was like, Beaufort?
Yeah.
Because New Orleans, and I'm like, I speak French, and like that's how it should be. Like, no, it's Beaufort, and I'm like, that's dumb. And then I moved to North Carolina, and I was just like, how do you people say this?
I was listening to a bunch of stuff on the Murdoch murders, which all take place in South Carolina, and they kept saying Beaufort. I was like, God, it's
cringe every time.
Wrong.
Cringe every time. All right. Who else you got?
Got my girl Judy Resnick.
What's up, Judy?
Okay, I'm only gonna do a couple on her because everyone just read her whole Wikipedia page.
You're fired up.
Oh, she's so fucking cool. Okay, she was the first Jewish woman to ever go into space.
L'chaim.
She logged 145 hours in orbit. She was the second American woman ever in space. So, like, she was almost the first American woman ever in space. It was like her and Sally fucking ride.
Nice.
And Sally just kind of won out. She was the 16th woman in U.S. history to get a perfect SAT score. And then she, like, graduated from high school early, went to Carnegie Mellon early. Like, just fucking amazing. There's a crater in the moon named after her.
Yes. She deserves it.
She's, like, everything about her, like, she was brilliant, but she was also, like flirty and beautiful. Like, you
can tell, like, just from the
right?
picture.
Like, she's, like, she dated some of her crew members. Like, she was just, I just want to be her. Like, okay, just everyone please go look up Judy Resnick. Read about her.
You've got to read the book that I keep telling you to read. Because,
oh yeah, I do.
Because she's not an astronaut, but she's a friggin' certified genius, and she's adorable and amazing, and
I'm
gonna go reread those books now.
I don't know if, like, I've got a crush on her or what, but, like, Judy Resnick just everyone please. Christy McAuliffe, my brain. So she's our teacher. Mm-hmm. She was known for teaching lessons about ordinary people changing history.
No, and she became an ordinary
people.
I
know. Listen, I was trying to do a lot of this.
You said happy facts.
I know. I'm sorry. By every single account I ever found of her, she was just one of the nicest people that you would ever meet, which was one of the reasons that NASA chose her out of, 10,000 other people.
She's the female Scobie.
Yeah.
She's just a golden retriever of a person.
She just has a nice face.
Whereas Judy's a pit bull of a person.
Oh my gosh, Judy.
She is smart and loyal and tough.
Yes. Just
and fierce and intimidating and just I want to snuggle.
I know. Krista was also... She was bringing a stuffed frog with her into space so that she could wave to her 2 children, Scott and Caroline, on camera. I'm sorry. Okay. Ellison Onizuka was the first Asian American and the first person of Japanese origin to go into space.
I wanted to comment earlier on how I like the diversity of this. I mean, especially for 1986.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait till we get to Ronald. He's got the longest list.
Oh, good.
Everyone should also read his Wikipedia page. Ellison also had... he spent a total of 3 days, 1 hour, and 33 minutes in space. He also has a moon crater named after him and also an asteroid.
Ooh, cool.
I know. Like, okay,
nice.
Ellison. His daughter had given him a soccer ball that was signed by her soccer team to take with him on the Challenger, and it survived the disaster.
I was wondering about the stuffed frog, honestly.
The frog, I don't think survived. The soccer ball survived, and it was returned to the family, and in 2016, astronaut Shane Kimbrough brought it with him to the International Space Station, where it spent 173 days in space. I know.
Feels.
I know. I was like crying at my desk while I was reading this. Like, it's too much.
I'm gonna tear up, and we all know I'm dead inside.
No. That's why when we were talking earlier about like, oh, feelings are good, I was like, you don't even know how much feelings I've had. Okay, Ronald McNair was the second African American in space, which part of me is like, hell yeah, and then part of me is like, man,
it was 1986.
1986, guys. And he went up on, I think he and Judy both went up on Discovery, I think, which wasn't that much sooner, but I'm like, guys, it's the 80s. Come on. Okay.
Did they date? Because actually
they're both like super attractive.
They would be a really attractive couple.
I hope so. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. This is such an attractive crew. Okay. In 1959, when Ronald was 9, he refused to leave a segregated library without being allowed to check out books, which he was eventually allowed to do. And that building that housed the library is now named after him.
Yes!
He graduated from North Carolina A&T in Greensboro in 1971. He has a
Carolina crew.
I know. He has a 5th degree black belt in karate.
Hell yeah.
He was an accomplished saxophonist, and he had planned on playing and recording a saxophone solo, like on the Challenger mission, which would have been the first original piece of music recorded in space. And he also has a moon crater named after him.
Good.
I know.
They should all have craters named after them.
I know! And that's all I have for our happy facts that also made you cry, and I'm so sorry. But, man, that's what I've got for everyone, and sorry.
So, mad respect to the astronauts and their families.
Yeah.
Mad disrespect to middle management, bad reporters, and conspiracy theory losers on the internet who are just, insulting the astronauts themselves.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned about Krista's 2 kids, like, how could she possibly abandon her husband and 2 kids to go start a new life with new kids? That's insulting to her. Mm-hmm. And everything is insulting to all of these real-life people who just happen to look like and share the same name as the astronauts. Like, it's insulting to both. Yeah.
It's like, yes, let's talk about how NASA fucked up, and let's for sure, like, make all the conspiracy theories you want about NASA and how fucked up they are, but, like, let's not fuck around with the real people. Yeah. And
let's not drag real people through the mud.
Yeah.
Unless they're middle management, apparently.
Unless they're middle management.
Again, some instances rock in a hard place. Like, let's blame also the higher-ups who are pressuring the middle management, whom then makes the bad decisions, but what else?
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to send in your suggestions for our live episode, please, because I am low-key freaking out about it, even though it's literally not set in stone yet. And I think that's it. Nothing else? Okay, cool. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.